My sister called from my wife's parents' house. Whispering. Bro, come get me. Bring the police. Why? What happened? I can't talk. They're coming back. Call ended. I drove 90 miles per hour. Arrived in 12 minutes. House dark. Door unlocked. Alone. Surrounded by. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Then my mother-in-law's voice from behind me, you weren't supposed to see that. Police arrived at her house. The September rain drummed against the windows of James Moody's home office as he reviewed footage from his latest project, a documentary about witness protection failures. At 42, James had built a reputation for hard-hitting investigative documentaries that exposed corruption and gave voice to the voiceless. His work had won awards, but more importantly, it had changed laws and freed innocent people. Tonight, though, his mind wasn't fully on the screen. His wife, Marjorie, had taken their 10-year-old son, Toby, to her parents' house for the weekend, and the silence felt wrong somehow. His phone buzzed at 9:47 p.m. Toby's name flashed on the screen. Hey, buddy. Everything okay? James answered, already sensing something off. Dad, the whisper was barely audible. Come get me. Bring the police. James's blood went cold. Why? What happened? I can't talk. They're coming back. The line went dead. James was out the door in 30 seconds, not even grabbing a jacket. He dialed 911 as he drove, but the operator's questions, what's the emergency? What did you see? Couldn't be answered. James had nothing concrete, just a terrified child's whisper. He hung up and pushed his car to 90 miles per hour through the rain-slick streets. The Oliver house sat in an affluent suburb 40 minutes away. James made it in 12. The house loomed dark against the night sky. Not a single light burned in any window. James' hands shook as he tried the front door. Unlocked, he pushed it open slowly. Toby, he called out, his voice echoing through the darkness. Dad, down here, the voice came from below from the direction of the basement stairs. James descended, using his phone's flashlight to navigate the wooden steps. The basement had always been off limits, even to Marjorie. Her mother, Bernadette, claimed it was just storage for her late father's things. Kermit Oliver had died 3 years ago from what everyone believed was a heart attack. The basement was vast, far larger than the footprint of the house above suggested. James' light swept across the space and his breath caught. Toby stood in the center of the room, surrounded by an array of monitors, filing cabinets, and walls covered with photographs. But these weren't family photos. The images showed people, dozens of them, in compromising positions. Affairs, drug use, financial crimes captured in high definition. One wall was devoted entirely to what looked like evidence boards with names, addresses, and dollar amounts written in neat handwriting. I came down looking for the bathroom, Toby said, his voice small. The upstairs one was locked. I found the door behind the bookshelf, and Dad, what is all this? Before James could answer, the lights blazed on. Bernadette Oliver stood at the top of the stairs, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. At 68, she maintained the regal bearing of someone who'd spent her life in control. You weren't supposed to see that, she said calmly, descending the stairs. Her eyes held no panic, no fear, only calculation. Marjorie was supposed to keep you both at the house tonight. I specifically told her to make sure you were busy. Where is my wife? James demanded, stepping protectively in front of Toby. Upstairs, sleeping. I gave her something to help her rest. She's been so stressed lately. Poor dear. Bernadette reached the bottom of the stairs. Put your phone away, James. We both know you're not going to call anyone. You're blackmailing people. Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as insurance collection. These people have all done terrible things. I simply ensure they contribute to causes I deem worthy. And before you get any heroic ideas, look at Monitor 7. James' eyes followed her gesture. The screen showed a compilation of images. James himself in situations he thought were private. Meeting with confidential sources, accepting cash payments for information, moments that could be taken out of context and spun into a narrative of corruption. You've been doing this for years, James breathed. How long does it matter? What matters is that you understand the situation. I have leveraged over 43 individuals, including 2 police chiefs, a district attorney, 3 judges, a senator, and now you. Your documentary career, your reputation, your freedom. All of it depends on your cooperation. Mom, Marjorie appeared at the top of the stairs, groggy, but alert enough to take in the scene. At 38, she still had the delicate features her mother had possessed in youth. But where Bernadette's eyes were hard, Marjorie's held confusion and dawning horror. Go back to bed, "Sweetheart," Bernadette said. "What is this?" Marjorie descended the stairs, her hands trembling. "What have you done?" "What I've always done, protected our family." "Do you think your father's business success was luck? Do you think James' documentary on the Riverside corruption case won awards because of his talent alone? I've been steering this family toward prosperity since before you were born." James watched as realization crept across his wife's face. "You knew," Marjorie whispered, "about the documentary. You helped him with sources, with funding." "Of course, I did. The Riverside case was going nowhere until I ensured certain evidence found its way to the right people. Your husband got his Emmy. The corrupt officials went to prison and I gained leverage over everyone involved. Everyone wins. Except the people you're blackmailing," James said. Bernadette smiled. "Those people are criminals, James. Adulterers, thieves, abusers. I'm simply making them pay for their sins. The money goes to good causes, charities, scholarships, community programs. I'm practically a philanthropist. Let us leave." James said, "We won't say anything. We'll forget this ever happened." "Will you though?" Bernadette moved to one of the filing cabinets and withdrew a thick folder. "Because I know you, James Moody. I've studied you for 7 years, since before you even met my daughter. You're a crusader, a truth seeker. It's what makes you so good at what you do. It's also what makes you predictable." She opened the folder, revealing photographs of James's own family. His sister Carol Collins struggling with addiction after her husband's death. His mother, Maria Moody, living in a modest assisted living facility. "I have contingencies," Bernadette continued. "Your sister's recovery is fragile. One word to her employer about her past and she loses her job, her insurance, everything. Your mother's facility is expensive. What would happen if the payment stopped?" James felt Toby grip his hand tighter. His son had witnessed this entire exchange, was learning exactly what kind of monster his grandmother was. "You're going to continue your life exactly as it was," Bernadette said. "Marjorie and Toby will visit me as usual. You'll make your documentaries, and when I need something, a specific story told or buried, a source protected or exposed, you'll do it. That's the cost of everyone you love staying safe. And if I refuse, then everyone learns the truth about James Moody, the documentarian who accepted bribes, planted evidence, manipulated stories for personal gain. Even if you prove it's false, eventually the damage will be done. Your career will be over. Your family will suffer, and I'll still be here running my business because you'll have no credible way to stop me." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the monitors and Toby's quiet breathing. James looked at his son, at his wife, at the woman who'd orchestrated their lives like pieces on a chessboard. "I understand," James finally said. Bernadette's smile widened. "I knew you would. You're a smart man, James. That's why I chose you for my daughter." The drive home was silent. Marjorie sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window while Toby slept in the back, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. James' mind raced, cataloging everything he'd seen. The monitors, the filing systems, the backup drives stacked in the corner. Bernadette's operation was sophisticated, built over decades. When they arrived home, James carried Toby to his bedroom while Marjorie moved like a sleepwalker. Once Toby was settled, James found his wife in the kitchen staring at nothing. "How much did you know?" he asked quietly. "Nothing." Marjorie's voice was hollow. "I swear, James. I knew my mother was controlling, that she always had opinions about everything, but this I never imagined. She said she chose me for you. My father died right after we got engaged. She encouraged the relationship from the start." "Yes, but I thought," Marjorie's voice broke. "I loved you. I chose you." James believed her. He'd spent years documenting liars and could spot deception in a heartbeat. Marjorie was a victim, too. Her whole life potentially manipulated by a woman who saw people as assets. "What are we going to do?" Marjorie asked. James pulled her close. "I'm going to think. I'm going to plan. And I'm going to make sure your mother never hurts anyone again. She has evidence against you. Against everyone, the police, the courts, she owns them." "I know." James kissed the top of her head. "But she made one mistake tonight." "What?" "She showed me everything. She was so confident in her control that she didn't hide the extent of her operation. Now I know what I'm up against and I know exactly how she thinks." Over the next 3 days, James acted normally. He worked on his documentary, had dinner with his family, exchanged pleasantries with Bernadette over the phone when she called to check in. But every spare moment, he was cataloging his memories of that basement, the names he'd glimpsed on the evidence boards, the patterns in her filing system, the technology she used. James had spent 15 years investigating corruption, following money trails, and exposing hidden networks. He toppled criminal organizations and exposed government conspiracies. Bernadette Oliver might have leverage, but she'd never faced someone who understood how to dismantle power structures from the inside. On the fourth day, James drove to a storage facility 3 towns over and rented a unit under a false name. He paid in cash. Inside, he set up a workstation, a laptop purchased with cryptocurrency, a secure server, and a wall where he began building his own evidence board. Every blackmail victim he could remember, every connection, every pattern. Bernadette had spent decades building her empire of fear. James would spend however long it took to tear it down. The call came 2 weeks later. James was editing footage when his phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Moody, my name is Craig Perez. I believe we need to talk about Bernadette Oliver." James's heart hammered. "Who is this?" "Someone she's been bleeding dry for 8 years. I received a coded message suggesting you might be in a position to help. Can we meet?" "How did you get this number?" "From someone else she's blackmailing. There are more of us than you think, Mr. Moody. We've been trying to find a way out for years. When word got around that you'd seen her operation, word got around." "How?" "Her driver, Fred Merritt. He's one of us, too. And he's been waiting for someone who could actually fight back. He saw you leave that night with your family. He's been quietly building a network of her victims who want to be free." James' mind raced. Bernadette's own driver was working against her. This could be a trap. It could be. Or it could be your only chance. "We're meeting tonight, 1000 p.m. at the old Riverside warehouse. The one from your documentary. We figured you'd know it's clean. You exposed everything dirty about that place 3 years ago." The line went dead. James sat in silence, weighing his options. It could absolutely be a trap. Bernadette could have discovered his storage unit, his investigation, and was luring him out. But if it was real, if there was a network of victims ready to fight, this changed everything. He called his sister Carol. "Hey, I need you to do something for me. Don't ask questions." "Jamie, you're scaring me. If you don't hear from me by midnight tonight, there's a package in my office safe. The combination is Toby's birthday inside our instructions. Follow them exactly." "What's going on?" "Insurance. I love you, Carol." He hung up before she could protest, then wrote a detailed letter explaining everything. Bernadette's operation, the basement, the blackmail network. He included the address of his storage unit and every piece of evidence he'd gathered. If this was a trap and he didn't survive, at least the truth would get out. At 9:45 p.m., James drove to the Riverside warehouse. The massive building loomed against the night sky, abandoned since the corruption case had shut down the illegal operations inside. James parked and approached cautiously, every sense on high alert. Inside, a dozen people waited in a circle of folding chairs illuminated by battery-powered lanterns. James recognized 3 faces immediately. A city council woman he'd seen at charity events, a local news anchor, and Detective Rufus Ua, a cop he'd interviewed for a documentary 2 years ago. Mr. Moody, Fred Merritt, stepped forward, a lean man in his 50s with tired eyes. "Thank you for coming. Talk fast. How do I know this isn't a setup?" "Because we all have too much to lose." The city councilwoman, Eleanor Haas, stood. "Bernadette Oliver has been blackmailing me for 6 years. She has photos of an affair I had during my first campaign. If I don't vote the way she wants on every city contract, every development deal, she'll destroy me. She has evidence I accepted gifts from a suspect's family." Detective Ua added, "I was trying to help them, but she made it look like bribery. She controls my entire precinct through me." One by one, the others shared their stories. A judge who'd had a gambling problem. A surgeon who'd covered up a mistake. A businessman who'd evaded taxes 20 years ago. All of them trapped. All of them paying. All of them desperate. "How long have you been meeting?" James asked. 6 months, Fred said. "I've been with Mrs. Oliver for 12 years. I've seen everything. The files, the victims, the way she operates. I thought about going to the police, but she owns too many of them. Then I started noticing patterns. People she targeted would sometimes mention each other in passing, not knowing they were both victims. I started making connections, reaching out carefully. We've been trying to find a way to stop her without destroying ourselves in the process." "Why me?" "Why now?" "Because you have something none of us have," Eleanor said. "A platform, access to media, investigation skills, and most importantly, you've already been exposed to her operation. She thinks she has you controlled, but that also means you can get close to her in ways we can't. She has evidence against me, too." James reminded them. "Fabricated evidence," Fred said. "I know because I helped her create some of it. Photoshopped images, edited videos, manufactured bank statements. The thing about Mrs. Oliver is she's so good at this because most of her leverage is real people's actual crimes and mistakes. But when she needs to control someone who's clean, she's not above creating evidence. I can testify to that. I can prove it's fake. James studied the driver carefully. Why betray her now? After 12 years, Fred's jaw tightened because last month my daughter Kristen came to visit. 22 years old, just graduated college. Mrs. Oliver took photos of her leaving my apartment, had them edited to make it look like something inappropriate, and told me she'd use them against me if I didn't help her target Kristen's new employer, a tech company she wants leverage over. I've done terrible things for that woman, helped her ruin lives. But I won't let her touch my daughter. The raw pain in Fred's voice convinced James more than any evidence could. This was real. These people were desperate, trapped, and finally ready to fight. What do you need from me? James asked. A plan, Detective Ua said. We have pieces, knowledge of her operation, some evidence, access to her daily routine. But we need someone who knows how to put it together into something that can actually take her down. James thought about his storage unit, his evidence board, the weeks of planning he'd already done. He'd been working alone, trying to protect his family while dismantling Bernadette's empire. But with these resources, with these victims ready to turn against her, I need complete transparency. James said, everything you know about her operation, every file, every victim, every payment. I need access to her house, her schedule, her vulnerabilities. Done, Fred said immediately. And I need you all to understand something. Taking down Bernadette, Oliver won't be clean. Your secrets might come out. Some of you might face legal consequences for the things she's blackmailing you about. This could destroy your lives before it saves them. Our lives are already destroyed. The news anchor Georgina Walton said quietly, we're just not in prison yet. At least this way, we get to choose how we fall. James looked around the circle of desperate, determined faces. 12 people willing to risk everything for freedom. Bernadette had built her empire on fear and control, believing herself untouchable. But she'd overlooked the one thing that could bring her down, the collective power of her victims once they decided to fight back. All right, James said. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next month, James orchestrated the most complex investigation of his career. Fred provided access to Bernadette's schedules, her movements, and most crucially, her digital systems. The woman who'd built an empire on blackmail had ironically trusted her driver with administrative passwords, never imagining he'd betray her. James learned the full scope of her operation. 43 victims, as she'd claimed, but the network went deeper. Bernadette had been running this operation for 34 years since her husband Kermit's business had failed in the early 90s. She'd started small, blackmailing a few wealthy neighbors, but had systematized it over decades. Kermit's heart attack 3 years ago had actually been suicide. Fred revealed that the man had discovered his wife's operation and couldn't live with the knowledge of what she'd become. Marjorie took the revelation hardest. Her entire childhood had been built on money extorted from desperate people. The charitable foundation her mother ran funded by blackmail. The prestigious schools Marjorie had attended paid for with other people's misery. Every happy memory was poisoned by the truth. But Marjorie's pain hardened into resolve. She began working with James, using her insider access to her mother's life to gather additional evidence. She photographed documents during visits, recorded conversations, and slowly built a case from the inside. The breakthrough came when James discovered Bernadette's true weakness, her ego. The woman documented everything because she wanted a record of her power. In a hidden safe in her bedroom revealed by Fred. She kept physical proof of every crime, every payment, every piece of leverage. It was her insurance policy, but it was also her vulnerability. She's paranoid about digital evidence being hacked, Fred explained during one of their late-night meetings at the warehouse. So, she keeps the most damaging material in hard copy, bank records, original photos, signed confessions, everything. We need that safe, James said. Getting into her bedroom would require a family emergency. Marjorie interrupted something that would pull her away from the house long enough for someone to access the safe. James looked at his wife. You're sure? She destroyed my father. She's been using me my entire life. She threatened my son. Marjorie's eyes were steel. I'm sure they spent 3 weeks planning. Detective Ua provided intelligence on Bernadette's security systems. Eleanor used her position on the city council to ensure certain building inspectors would be looking the other way at crucial moments. The surgeon, Wendell McCarty, agreed to stage a medical emergency at a charity gala Bernadette was attending. Fred would drive her to the hospital, keeping her away from the house. Meanwhile, James would break into the safe, document everything, and create copies of the evidence. But they needed more than just evidence. They needed a way to release it that couldn't be stopped or traced back to them. Bernadette had too many powerful allies. The solution came from an unexpected source. Ignacio Wolf, a tech entrepreneur Bernadette had been blackmailing for 4 years, revealed he'd been developing a decentralized data distribution network for whistleblowers. It's designed to release information across multiple platforms simultaneously, impossible to stop once activated. I built it because of her, actually. I just never had the courage to use it. Can it handle this much data? James asked. Terabytes, documents, photos, videos, everything. And it releases to news organizations, social media, law enforcement databases, all at once. Even if she manages to shut down one source, the information keeps spreading. James smiled for the first time in weeks. Then we have our weapon. The plan was set for November 15th at a gala fundraiser for children's literacy. One of Bernadette's favorite charities, ironically funded by extortion. At precisely 8:30 p.m., Dr. McCarty would stage chest pain severe enough to require immediate hospitalization. Bernadette, as the event sponsor, would insist on accompanying him. Fred would drive her to the hospital, then report car trouble, keeping her stranded until James had what he needed. James would have exactly 2 hours to break into the Oliver house, crack the safe, photograph every document, and escape. Toby would stay with Carol, protected by 2 of Detective Ua's trusted officers. Marjorie would be at the gala maintaining appearances while monitoring Bernadette. The night before the operation, James couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office reviewing the plan for the 100th time. So many things could go wrong. If Bernadette discovered the breach early, if the safe had additional security they didn't know about, if any of the 12 victims got cold feet and warned her, "You're doing the right thing." James turned to find Marjorie in the doorway wearing one of his old shirts. Am I? We're breaking a dozen laws. If this fails, Toby loses both his parents. If we do nothing, Toby grows up learning that monsters win if they're smart enough. Marjorie sat beside him. My mother needs to face justice. Not just for us, but for everyone she's hurt. For my father, James took her hand. When this is over, assuming we're not in prison, what do you want to do? I want to take Toby somewhere far away from here. Somewhere she never touched. And I want to build a life that's actually ours, not one she orchestrated. Marjorie leaned her head on his shoulder. But first, I want to watch her empire burn. The next evening, James watched from across the street as luxury cars arrived at the downtown hotel hosting the gala. He wore all black, a backpack containing tools and camera equipment slung over his shoulder. His phone buzzed. A text from Marjorie. She's here holding court like a queen. At 8:30 exactly, another text. It's happening. James drove to the Oliver house parking 3 blocks away. Fred had confirmed the security system was older, relying on motion sensors that could be fooled by specific movement patterns. James approached the house carefully using the technique Detective Ua had taught him, slow, deliberate movements close to the walls where sensors were less sensitive. The back door opened with the key Marjorie had provided. Inside, the house was silent. James moved through the familiar halls, up the stairs to Bernadette's bedroom. The master suite was enormous, decorated in expensive neutrals. James found the safe behind a painting. How cliché, he thought, of Bernadette and Kermit on their wedding day. The young couple smiled at the camera, unaware of the darkness their future held. The safe was a high-end model with both a key and combination lock. Fred had provided the combination obtained months ago during one of Bernadette's careless moments. James' hands shook as he dialed the numbers. July 18, 34. The date Bernadette had started her operation. The safe clicked open. Inside were 5 leather-bound ledgers, dozens of manila folders, several external hard drives, and stacks of photographs. James photographed everything systematically using a high-resolution camera to capture each page, each image, each piece of evidence. The ledgers detailed every payment, every threat, every victim. The folders contained the blackmail material itself, affairs, crimes, mistakes, all documented with clinical precision. One folder was labeled James Moody. Inside, James found the fabricated evidence against him along with Bernadette's handwritten notes. Subject is ideal for long-term control. Moral compass makes him predictable. Suggest marriage to Marjorie to secure permanent access. Useful for media manipulation and information gathering. His wife had been right. Their entire relationship had been engineered. The rage James felt in that moment nearly derailed his focus. But he channeled it into determination. Every photo, every document, every piece of evidence went into his camera's memory. He was closing the safe when his phone buzzed. Problem. She's suspicious. Calling Fred back. Get out now. James' heart hammered. He'd photographed maybe 80% of the contents. He needed more time. Another text, this time from Fred. She knows something's wrong. Demanding I take her home immediately. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes wasn't enough to escape cleanly and eliminate all traces of his presence. James made a split-second decision. He grabbed 3 of the ledgers and 2 folders of the most damaging evidence, including his own fabricated file, and shoved them into his backpack. Then he closed the safe, rehung the painting, and ran. He made it out the back door and across the yard when he heard a car pulling into the driveway. James dove behind a hedge as Bernadette's Mercedes appeared. Fred at the wheel looking pale and stressed. Bernadette emerged, her face tight with suspicion. Check every room. She ordered Fred. Something's wrong. I can feel it. James waited until they were inside, then sprinted to his car. He drove carefully, maintaining the speed limit despite every instinct screaming to floor it. His phone rang. Marjorie, did you get it? Most of it. She came back early. I had to take the physical evidence. She'll know it's gone. Silence. Then we move to phase 2 now. Tonight before she can regroup. We're not ready. We have to be. Call everyone. Tell them it's happening now. James' mind raced through contingencies. They'd planned for this scenario. A rush deployment. If the operation was compromised, Ignacio's system was ready. The evidence James had collected over the past month was already uploaded. The physical documents he'd just stolen would fill in the gaps. Do it, James said. He drove straight to Ignacio's apartment where the tech entrepreneur was already at his computer. Multiple screens showing the distribution network interface. Eleanor, Detective Ua, and 4 others from their group were there, having rushed over when Marjorie sent the alert. How much do we have? Ignacio asked as James burst in. Everything. Digital photos of her ledgers, the blackmail files, payment records, plus the originals of her 3 most recent years of operation. James dumped the ledgers and folders onto the desk. Can your system handle this? Give me 2 hours to scan the physical evidence and integrate it with what you already uploaded. Then we deploy. Detective Ua's phone rang. He listened, his face darkening. That was my contact at the station. Bernadette just called in a burglary. She's got 3 squad cars en route to her house and she specifically requested that I not be involved in the investigation. She knows it was one of us. Eleanor said worse. James realized she knows we're working together. Fred must have. His phone rang. Fred's number. James answered on speaker. James listened carefully. Fred's voice was strained. Wrong. She has my daughter Kristen. She had someone grab her from her apartment an hour ago. Bernadette says, if I don't tell her everything, if I don't give her the names of everyone working against her, Sheila's voice broke. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't let her hurt my baby. Bernadette's voice came through the phone. Hello, James. I admit I'm impressed. You actually managed to organize a rebellion. Very cinematic. But you forgot something crucial. I'm always 3 steps ahead. Fred's daughter is safe with some associates of mine. She'll stay that way as long as everyone cooperates. You have 1 hour to return my property and disperse your little group. Otherwise, Kristen Merritt becomes the first casualty of your failed revolution. And James, I still have evidence against everyone in your coalition. You can't release it without destroying them all. So, what's it going to be? Your principles or their lives? The line went dead. The room erupted in panicked voices. Someone was crying. Detective Ua was calling his contacts trying to trace Christine's location. Eleanor sat down heavily, her face ashen. She wins, Wendell McCarty said quietly. She always wins. No. James's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone quiet. We have one advantage. She doesn't know how far we've gotten. She thinks we're still gathering evidence that we need more time. She doesn't know Ignacio's system is ready, but it's not. Ignacio protested. I need 2 hours to integrate. Then we deploy what we have. The photos I took tonight, the evidence I've been gathering for weeks. It's incomplete, but it's enough to cause chaos. Enough to make the authorities look at her seriously. And Kristen dies. Fred's voice came from James' phone. The call hadn't actually disconnected. Bernadette had left the line open, letting them hear Fred's despair. You'll kill my daughter to make a point. James closed his eyes, thinking fast. Bernadette's mistake was believing he'd choose between justice and an innocent life. But there was always another option, the one she'd never consider because she thought he was predictable. Ignacio, can your system send files to specific recipients instead of broadcasting everything? Yes, but send everything we have to Detective U's captain. Just him. Include a note that Bernadette Oliver is holding Kristen Merritt hostage at an unknown location and that she needs to be arrested immediately for kidnapping. Make it impossible to ignore that'll burn all of us. Eleanor said our secrets will come out better than an innocent woman dying. James looked around the room. I'm giving you all an out. Walk away now. I'll take the fall. Say I coerced you. But if you stay, you need to understand we're going all in. Our secrets, our careers, everything. We exchanged our controlled destruction for her complete downfall. One by one, they nodded. Even Eleanor, who had the most to lose, straightened her shoulders and said, "Do it, Fred," James said into the phone. "We're coming for Kristen, and we're bringing Bernadette down tonight. Trust us." He hung up before Fred could respond. "Ignacio, send it. Everything, not just to the captain. Send it everywhere. News stations, the FBI, the state attorney general. Make it impossible to bury." "That's not the plan. The plan changed when she took a hostage. Send it all." Ignacio's fingers flew across the keyboard. Windows opened and closed on his screens. File transfer bars crept across displays. "It's going to take 15 minutes to upload and deploy across all channels. Then we have 15 minutes to find Kristen." James turned to Detective Ua. "You said Bernadette has associates. Who?" "She's used the same security company for years. Bolton Security. They handle her home security, personal protection, the works. Ex-military types, not particular about the legality of their work. Where would they take someone for leverage?" Ua thought for a moment. "Bolton has a storage facility they use for equipment. It's isolated, secure. If I was going to hold someone, that's where I'd do it. Address." "James. We can't." "Address." Ua rattled it off. James was already heading for the door. "Call your captain. Tell him everything. Make sure he knows there's a hostage situation. And Ignacio, don't stop that upload no matter what happens." Eleanor grabbed his arm. "You're not going alone." "I am. The rest of you need to be here on record cooperating with authorities when this breaks. If I'm the only one who goes off mission, the legal exposure is minimized for everyone else." Before they could argue, James was gone, running to his car. The storage facility was 20 minutes away. The data upload would complete in 12. He had a narrow window to extract Kristen before Bernadette realized her empire was burning. James pushed his car hard, running red lights and weaving through traffic. His phone buzzed constantly. Calls from Marjorie, from the group, from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all. The storage facility was a squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence. A single guard sat in a booth at the entrance looking bored. James drove past, parking a block away. He approached on foot, staying in the shadows. The fence was easy to climb. James dropped into the facility's lot and moved between rows of storage units. Most were dark, but light showed under the door of Unit 47. James crept closer and heard voices inside. Two men talking about sports, sounding relaxed. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have backup. What he had was surprise and desperation. James picked up a rock from the gravel lot and threw it hard at a storage unit 3 rows over. The clang echoed across the facility. Inside Unit 47, the conversation stopped. "Check it out," one voice said. The door opened and a large man in tactical gear emerged holding a flashlight. James waited until he was 10 feet away, then stepped out of the shadows. "Looking for me?" The man spun, reaching for a weapon, but James was already moving. 15 years of documentary work had taken him to war zones, disaster areas, and dangerous places. He'd learned to fight out of necessity, studying under the same self-defense instructors who trained journalists in conflict zones. James ducked the man's grab, drove his elbow into the guard's throat and followed with a knee to the gut. The man went down gasping. James took his flashlight and his radio, then zip-tied his hands with a cable tie from the man's own belt. Clearly, they'd come prepared for restraining people. The second guard emerged from the unit. "Rick, what's—" James hit him in the face with the flashlight. The man stumbled back and James tackled him, both of them crashing into the storage unit. Inside, Kristen Merritt was zip-tied to a chair, her eyes wide with terror. The guard was bigger than James and trained. They grappled, knocking over boxes and equipment. The guard got on top, raining down punches. James blocked most of them, but his vision blurred. He was going to lose this fight. Then Kristen, still bound to the chair, hopped forward, and brought the chair down on the guard's back. The man howled and rolled off James. James scrambled to his feet, grabbed a metal pipe from the corner, and brought it down on the guard's head. The man went limp. James cutrison free with the guard's knife. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Who?" "Friend of your father's." We need to go now. They ran for the fence. Behind them, James heard the first guard regaining consciousness, shouting into his radio. James and Kristen cleared the fence and reached his car as headlights appeared at the facility entrance. Bolton security reinforcements. James drove, checking his rear view mirror constantly. His phone buzzed. Marjorie, it's everywhere. The news just broke. They're calling it the biggest blackmail operation in state history. Good, James said. Kristen's safe. Where's Bernadette? At the house. Police are surrounding it. She won't come out. James changed direction, heading for the Oliver residence. Kristen stared at him. What's happening? What did my father get involved in? Your father is a hero, James said. He helped take down a monster. The Oliver house was chaos when they arrived. Police cars, news vans, helicopters overhead with spotlights. James parked a block away and approached on foot with Kristen. Detective Ua met them at the perimeter. She's barricaded inside. Ua said. Won't talk to negotiators, but James, it's working. The captain has assigned a task force. The DA is already drawing up charges. Every person she blackmailed is being contacted. Half of them are coming forward voluntarily now that the evidence is public. Where's Marjorie? Where's Toby with your sister? Safe. Ua has studied James. You look like hell. I feel worse. James watched the house. The lights burning in every window. Does she know Fred is alive? That Kristen is safe? We haven't told her anything. She's alone in there and she knows her world is ending. Fred Merritt appeared from behind a police cruiser running to his daughter. The reunion was tearful. Fred looked at James over Kristen's shoulder and mouthed. Thank you. An hour passed. 2. The standoff continued. Then as dawn began to lighten the sky, movement at the front door. Bernadette emerged immaculate in a tailored suit, her silver hair perfect despite the circumstances. She walked down the steps with her head high, ignoring the police officers approaching with weapons drawn. I would like to make a statement, she announced, her voice carrying across the chaos. Immediately, cameras and microphones thrust toward her. She'd always known how to command a stage. For 34 years, I have operated a business that held powerful people accountable for their crimes and indiscretions. I collected what they owed society and redistributed it to worthy causes. Millions of dollars to charities, scholarships, community programs. Yes, my methods were unconventional, but the results speak for themselves. You destroyed lives, a reporter shouted. I exposed people who deserve to be exposed. Adulterers, thieves, corrupt officials. Every person I targeted was guilty of something. I simply made them pay. What about James Moody? The evidence against him was fabricated. For the first time, Bernadette's composure cracked slightly. Her eyes found James in the crowd. Mr. Moody is an exception. I needed someone I could control who had the skills to assist my operation. The evidence against him was insurance. So, you framed an innocent man. I did what was necessary. In any system of justice, there are occasionally innocent casualties. Detective Ua stepped forward. Bernadette Oliver, you're under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, blackmail, and about 40 other charges. You have the right to remain silent. I will not be silent. Bernadette's voice rose. You are arresting the wrong person. Every person I blackmailed committed crimes. They should be in handcuffs, not me. I was serving justice where the system failed. You were serving yourself, James called out. The crowd parted, creating a path between them. You used your husband's suicide to build an empire. You manipulated your own daughter's life. You threatened children. You're not a vigilante or a philanthropist. You're just a criminal who got good at justifying her crimes. Bernadette's mask finally shattered. You self-righteous fool. Do you think you've won? My lawyers will have me out in hours. The evidence you stole is inadmissible. Half the judges in this state owe me favors. You've accomplished nothing except ensuring your own secrets are public. How does it feel, James, knowing everyone now thinks you're corrupt? The evidence against me was fake, and Fred Merritt is prepared to testify to that in court. But even if it wasn't, even if I had to sacrifice my reputation to stop you, it would be worth it. Because unlike you, I understand that some things are more important than control. Police officers moved in, placing handcuffs on Bernadette's wrists. She didn't resist, but her eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over. Yes, James said quietly. It is. As they led her away, the crowd erupted. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, people cheering. James felt nothing but exhaustion. He'd won, but the cost was still being calculated. Over the next 6 weeks, the scope of Bernadette's operation fully emerged. The task force discovered evidence of 127 victims beyond the original 43, spanning 3 decades. The ledgers James had photographed detailed over $50 million in extorted payments. Bernadette had invested the money in legitimate businesses and real estate, creating a complex financial empire that took forensic accountants months to untangle. The victims' stories dominated the news cycle. Some, like Eleanor Haas, chose to publicly confess their original sins and accept the consequences. Eleanor resigned from the city council but emerged with her integrity intact, having chosen honesty over continued hiding. Others were prosecuted for their crimes. The gambling judge lost his position. The tax-evading businessmen faced charges. But most of the victims were people who'd made mistakes, not committed serious crimes, and they found public sympathy when the full context emerged. Fred Merritt became an unexpected hero. His testimony about Bernadette's operation providing crucial evidence. He'd kept detailed records of everything he'd done in her service, and his willingness to face consequences for his complicity helped bring down her network of accomplices at Bolton Security and other companies. James' fabricated evidence was debunked quickly. Ignazio's analysis showed the photoshopping and digital manipulation. Fred's testimony confirmed how it was created. James' reputation, rather than being destroyed, was enhanced. The documentary filmmaker who taken down a massive criminal conspiracy became a household name. Networks offered him deals for new series. Book publishers wanted his story, but James turned most of it down. He made one documentary about the experience, carefully edited to protect the victims who wanted privacy while exposing the full scope of Bernadette's crimes. The Emmy he won for it felt hollow compared to the satisfaction of seeing justice served. Marjorie struggled the most. Her mother's arrest, the revelation of how her entire life had been manipulated, the knowledge that her father had killed himself rather than live with his wife's crimes. It broke something in her. She spent months in therapy working through the trauma while trying to shield Toby from the worst details. The divorce papers arrived at the jail where Bernadette was being held awaiting trial. According to Fred, who visited once to give his final testimony, she ripped them up without reading them. She still believed she'd done nothing wrong. The trial was a media sensation. Bernadette represented herself, firing 4 lawyers who tried to argue for plea deals. She used the courtroom as a stage, giving impassioned speeches about justice and accountability, portraying herself as a misunderstood crusader against corruption. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and found her guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge, a new appointment from outside the state to ensure impartiality, addressed Bernadette directly. "You claim you were serving justice, but justice requires transparency, accountability, and fairness. You operated in secret, answered to no one, and showed no mercy. You destroyed lives not because those people deserve punishment, but because you could profit from their destruction. You are everything you claim to oppose." The court sentences you to 45 years in federal prison. Bernadette showed no emotion as Baifs led her away. But as she passed James, seated in the gallery with Marjorie and Toby, she paused. "You'll never be free of me," she said quietly. "Every time you look at your wife, you'll remember that I chose her for you. Every success you have, you'll wonder if I engineered it. I may be in prison, but I'm still in your head." James met her eyes. "No, you're just in prison, and that's all you'll ever be again." 6 months after the sentencing, James stood in the living room of a new house in Vermont, hundreds of miles from the Oliver estate and its poison memories. Toby was at school making friends who knew nothing about the scandal. Marjorie was teaching art at a local college, rediscovering a passion her mother had discouraged as impractical. Carol had moved nearby, 2 years sober, and working as a counselor for other recovering addicts. James' phone buzzed. A message from Fred Merritt, who was serving his own sentence at a minimum security facility for his role in Bernadette's operation. "Kristen graduated today. Top of her class. Thank you for giving her that chance." James smiled and typed back, "You gave it to her. You chose to fight." He looked out the window at the mountains in the distance, at the clean snow covering the ground, at the world unburdened by Bernadette Oliver Unk's schemes. The scars would always be there, the knowledge of how their lives had been manipulated, the years they'd lost to her control. But they were free now. They'd earned that freedom through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to risk everything for truth. Marjorie emerged from her studio, paint on her hands and a rare smile on her face. "Come see what I finished." In the studio stood a large canvas. The painting showed a house, the Oliver estate, but rendered in abstract violent strokes, the structure fragmenting and dissolving into light. It was cathartic, a visual representation of their liberation. "It's perfect," James said, pulling her close. "It's the last one," Marjorie replied. "I've been painting our trauma for 6 months. This is the final piece. After this, I paint new things, beautiful things, things that are ours. That evening, as they had dinner together, a real family, unmanipulated and authentic, Toby asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. Dad, do you think Grandma will ever admit she was wrong? James considered lying, offering comfort. But his son deserved truth. No, buddy. Some people can't see their own mistakes. They build walls of justification so high they can't see over them. Your grandmother convinced herself that being powerful was the same as being right. But you proved she was wrong. We proved it. You, me, Mom, Fred, and everyone else who was brave enough to stand up. One person can't fight someone like her alone. But together, we were stronger than her fear. Toby nodded, processing this. Then with the resilience of childhood, he asked, "Can I have dessert?" James laughed, feeling the weight of the past year finally beginning to lift. They'd survived. They'd fought. They'd won. And now, finally, they could begin to heal. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the world in white, pristine, and new.